All right. So thank you everyone for joining this Q&A about the Public Affairs Manager in Spain position at the Goodwood Institute Europe. My name is Catherine Derieux. I work in People Operations here at GFI, and I'm based in France. And with me is Alex Holst. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, very happy to be here. I am Alex Holst. I work here in our Brussels policy team for GFI Europe.
So maybe to start with, Alex, can you give us a little maybe intro about the position, how it came about? And yeah, let's take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I start like at the beginning. So some on the call will know that at GFI Europe, our focus with regard to promoting alternative proteins has started in Europe a couple of years ago, 4 years ago now. And EU policy has been really important. This is why I'm based here in Brussels. I'm making sure there's enough research funding for the alternative protein sector. So there's a fair regulatory environment and fair rules around labeling and other policies. But as Europe is a big place, it's a large continent, what has become increasingly clear is that we need to be present at the national level in Europe. And so we have been extremely fortunate finding great people working for GFI Europe on policy now in Germany and in the UK. So we are working there with national governments, with nonprofits, NGOs, and others in those countries. And Spain is a country last year that we identified really as the next most important one to be active in for a variety of reasons. And I'm sure we are going to get into the details later. But I'm very excited that now we are hiring someone who will lead all our policy advocacy in Spain. And so this role is really being the point person for GFI Europe in Spain, like figuring out who are the key stakeholders on the governmental side, but also on the civil society side we need to talk to. What can we do to help Spain become a leading country when it comes to alternative protein innovation? So in terms of like strategic oversight, this role will be critical, actually executing our plans in Spain, building a coalition, building a supportive ecosystem with other non-governmental stakeholders in Spain. That's really the main focus of this role. It's a big role, and so we are really, really mindful that the person we will in the end find and will appoint needs to be supported by lots of other people in our team. So they will work with our communications team, with the rest of our policy team, and with other support systems that we will put in place in Spain.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It really sounds like an exciting role with like lots of exciting things to do. Okay, so the policy team is our biggest team at GFI Europe at the moment. I think, how many are you now? Like nine, I think 9 people, is that right? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about like the structure of the team and where this role would fit within that structure?
Yeah, I think we're about 9 people now, which like even I am losing count sometimes. So the way the team is currently made up is we have Alice Ravenscroft, who's our head of policy, who really oversees all our policy work across Europe. And then we have a group of colleagues, including me, who are based here in Brussels. So we focus mostly on EU policy, working with the European Commission, the European Parliament, and other EU institutions. But we also look at what else is happening in Europe. And then there are national level policy managers, public affairs managers. So as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, in Germany and in the UK, we have dedicated people working at the national level. In Germany, actually, we have 2 people now because we realized fairly quickly that there is a lot more opportunity there. And so we increased our team capacity there. And so that's a similar model, I think, that we want to apply in Spain. So the Spain Public Affairs Manager will be fully integrated into the GFI Europe policy team. And so we'll benefit from all the interactions and the collaboration with the rest of the policy team. And also will be part of looking at alternative protein policy in a holistic way from a European perspective. So of course, Spain or Germany, for example, are member states of the European Union. So part of this role will also be to collaborate with our Brussels team to make sure Spain plays a positive role at the EU level.
Awesome, thank you. And I think that touches upon a question that we received. Let me find it. Okay, so someone was asking if you would consider the possibility of engaging a young team of consultants, but I think the plan is to just like have someone in-house to do the job. Is that correct?
Yeah, but exactly. But that's a really good question. I think what we've learned from other countries is that working with consultants can be extremely impactful and beneficial. And we've actually started working in Spain last year to a limited extent, or like on a project basis, with part-time consultants to engage on policy, to basically scope out what the opportunity in Spain is. And based on that experience, we are now confident that we really need someone full-time permanently in Spain who can really drive that work forward. But then on the flip side, once we have that person in place and we might realize we need additional support, for example, through public affairs consultancies, that's definitely an option. And we've done that on a project basis in Brussels. We've done it in the UK. So that's definitely something we would want to look into once the person who will lead our Spain public affairs work is in place.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Someone asks, does the job allows for future opportunities to grow within the company?
Yes, so I think in general we are very mindful in terms of our culture, GFI Europe, and maybe you can talk more about that, Catherine, in a minute. We are very mindful that providing opportunities for learning and development and personal growth is like a key aspect of a happy workplace, and that's definitely something we are trying to provide. And we have some systems and processes in place to ensure that. It's, for example, a key part of the line management relationship to review and feedback ways of improving personal growth and learning. And then more specifically for like the Spain role, it's going to be the first full-time policy role in Spain. So this person already starts with quite a high level of autonomy and strategic responsibility. And then beyond that, there are lots of different scenarios in the future. None of those are decided, so we don't know yet if our team in Spain will grow in the future. That's definitely an option. That's what has happened in Germany so far. But that's an option that we might want to look at in the future. There might be other opportunities within the policy team now that we grow. I think personally there are probably going to be quite a bit of opportunities in the future, but that's uncertain at this stage.
Yeah, I think part of this role will also kind of help unveil those opportunities. Kind of, as you mentioned, it's quite a big role and it's kind of a pioneer role in the team, kind of paving the way for alternative recruiting in Spain. So yeah, I think they're likely to have very exciting opportunities and also lots of room to learn and grow. As you mentioned, like our culture is very much to give people a lot of autonomy and live with trust. So kind of having that ownership over the work that you do, I think is pretty exciting and kind of being involved with that growth. On a very practical level, like you mentioned, learning and development opportunities. So excitingly this year for 2024, we are doubling our learning kind of budget. So there is a part that's going to be for like full team training, but we also have a budget of like on top of that, 500 euros to be used at the discretion of the employees, obviously like in conversation with their line manager, but just like to like take classes, attend conferences, or just like take a course or buy books or things like that. So there are a lot of things also that are possible in that area. All right, let me look at all the questions that are coming in. So someone is asking, okay, why are you opening this position in Spain? Is it because Spain is a major pork producer, which has raised serious environmental concerns and stirred political noise? Or is it because you see potential to bolster local alternative meat industry? Alex, do you want to, tell us why Spain is important and why is it the new country that we're expanding into?
Yeah, sure. I try to make this not too long because, as I said, I'm just very enthusiastic about starting to work seriously in Spain. So one thing to start with maybe is Spain is, as I think most people on this call who are familiar with Spain will know, one of the major large countries in the EU. So it has quite a bit of influence at the EU level in terms of decision making. But that's true of other countries as well, right? So Italy, for example, is a larger country. What we also see in Spain is quite a vibrant innovation ecosystem with regard to food technology and alternative proteins. I think that the question included that. So we've seen quite a bit of startups working on cultivated meat. We've seen quite a bit of plant-based activity in the country. Also from small startups, but also large food companies, actually large meat companies have invested in plant-based food and even on the fermentation side. So there is a vibrant commercial ecosystem. There's also quite a bit of research and innovation activity at the university level. So there are really good institutes working on biotechnology, on food science, and like culinary sciences. So all of these things coming together, like really, yeah, I think provides an opportunity to bring those strengths to policymakers. And so that's why last year I've started to work with two consultants, one based in Madrid and one in Catalonia, to work with national governments and with the regional government in Catalonia to start a conversation about alternative protein in Spain. What is the opportunity? And the feedback has been, yeah, really positive. So there was a lot of curiosity, there was a lot of hunger on the side of policymakers to learn more about what is needed for Spain to advance in alternative proteins. Also looking at competitors, other countries like France, others in Europe. And so based on that, I'm just really confident that with this role in Spain, we can influence the trajectory of the country.
Awesome, exciting. Okay, so we have a couple of questions about seafood in particular. So someone is asking, how does GFI address the concerns of the seafood sector regarding labeling of plant-based seafood alternatives? And then also about seafood. The Spanish seafood sector has strong concerns and is against the labeling of alternative proteins as seafood. Like, is this trend also observed in the UK and Germany? Do you have national focal points in Spain? Is that something that you can speak to, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, the seafood topic is an interesting one. So we've seen, as the question indicates, we've seen some noises out of some Spanish seafood associations that they want to restrict the labeling of seafood. For example, banning the use of fish-related terms for plant-based seafood products. We've seen similar moves only very rarely elsewhere in Europe. So we've seen discussions around this here in Brussels, in the Fisheries Committee in the European Parliament, but they didn't actually go anywhere. So we've not seen the same level of discussion in Germany or the UK, in part probably because those are not as major seafood producers as maybe Spain. Our general approach to these questions around labeling, it's an important topic for seafood and for meat, is that alternative protein, alternative seafood products should be able to use terms like salmon or fish or tuna, as if that's the type of product they are trying to replace. Of course, those products need to be properly labeled. So, for example, if you're selling a plant-based tuna, you should call it plant-based tuna or whatever qualifier you want to use, so that consumers know it's not made out of actual fish. But to really avoid these kind of restrictions that would put plant-based and other alternative seafood producers at a disadvantage in terms of like what consumers expect these products to taste like.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so OPSI kind of question, someone is asking if the contract is ruled according to Spanish employment law or Belgian law. So we work in Spain as a foreign employer, so you would have like a Spanish contract following like a Spanish legislation and compliance and all of that. I think that's the main, yeah. That would be as simple as that. For Spanish, it's pretty straightforward because we already have a couple of employees based in Spain. So that will be an easy one to set up for us. So that's quite a nice one. All right. Are there already any pre-established objectives to achieve in medium term? In Spain, do you already have specific stakeholders identified in Spain? So I guess that's two questions in one. Sorry, Alex.
No, that's great. Yeah, and there's a big question, of course. Maybe to take the second one first, do we have already stakeholders established in Spain? The short answer is yes, to an extent. And that's because we've already done this work with local consultants. So we've already identified and have started building relationships with certain policymakers, mostly in the Catalonia regional government and to an extent in the national government, although because there was the election, of course, last June, which fell exactly in the middle of our consulting project. There was a bit of a disruption there because some of the people that we engaged with before that have since changed positions. So there is a basis from which the new role will be able to work from. At the outside of government side, so other NGOs, think tanks, businesses, there we have quite a bit of established relationships. Again, it's not extensive, so there's definitely a lot more that this role needs to do, but it's not starting from zero. And I can't remember the first part of the question, I'm sorry. Oh, established objectives to achieve in the medium term. So there are some ongoing policy initiatives that we have worked on in Spain. One is with the Catalan government, and the person, whenever they are going to be in place, would probably be expected to take that on. But in general, part of this role is going to be having a lot of autonomy and setting strategy and setting focus. Overall, our policy work in Europe and across the world focuses on these bigger themes. One is mobilizing public research and innovation funding from governments to conduct open access research on alternative proteins. One is around ensuring that there's a transparent and clear regulatory path to market. One is around these questions of labeling, and we are also very keen to get into questions on funding infrastructure and making sure the manufacturing capacity that we need for alternative proteins to scale up is supported by governments. And I would say the work is going to be in those themes, but then within that, concrete policy initiatives, legislation, policy strategies, whatever it is in Spain, that is really going to be up to the person who leads this work to identify and to prioritize in collaboration with the rest of the team, of course. They are not going to be just left alone to do that work. They're going to lead on prioritizing and then essentially executing on that work.
Yeah, sorry, my mouse conveniently just died, so I'm struggling a bit with the trackpad. So apologies if things are a bit hectic here. I think on objectives, maybe it would be interesting to talk a little bit about how we set objective, kind of the OKRA system within GFI.
Yeah, sure. So the way we currently organize our work more in the long and medium term is we are using this, as you said, OKR system. So this is objectives, key results, and actions. And so we start off by we divide the year in 3 cycles, and every cycle, as a policy team and as a whole GFI Europe team, we come together and we define what we want to achieve over the next period. The overall objectives can be way more long-term. So especially in policy, anyone who has worked in policy will know oftentimes it takes a lot of time. It's not as easy as doing a bunch of work for a couple of months and then seeing a result. It sometimes takes years and years to actually succeed in policy work. And so that's fine. That's exactly how it should be. And we want to be ambitious in the long term. And so we have these long-term objectives, and then on a more 4 months period, we are looking at key results. What is possible for us to achieve then? How measurable is it for us to achieve it? What do we need to do to get there? Who do we need to collaborate with? And that's all defined in this OKR and action system. And this is how we try to structure our work and make the policy work that sometimes can feel a bit daunting and very big, trying to make it bite-sized and look okay, how do we make progress? How do we know we make progress? So yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that.
And maybe on the same kind of trend, are there any recent like policy wins that you're particularly like excited about? Not necessarily in Spain, just like cool things that happened in the sector recently.
Yeah, there are actually quite a few. So I have to think now which one I want to talk about. I mean, there's one I think that showcases this type of long-term policy work and what it can do. Just a couple of months ago, the German government announced their budget for 2024. And as part of that budget, they included an investment of 38 million euros in alternative proteins, which was a huge success. And I'm very confident that that wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't have been for our really brilliant colleagues in Berlin doing the work that they're doing. That's not to say that it was only them. It's usually a team effort, and we are working in collaboration with other actors on that. But I'm really confident that we played a key part there. And so that team in Germany has been in place for 2 years now. So that has been one of the results and culminations of 2 years of pretty hard work, but it pays off, and those are the kind of wins that we're looking for. Another one maybe to mention is actually in Spain, and I wouldn't necessarily say like this was completely up to us. We were in Spain, or in Catalonia specifically, for just a few months, but the Catalan government has announced a 7 million euro investment in a research center for alternative protein innovation. And that is one of the things that we can now build on. So we've already established relationships with the people who lead that center. Those are the kind of initial government investments that we then can build on and say, okay, this has been a great start. Where do we go from here? What are the precise focus areas these people are going to work on? How can we really leverage this to make the country even more successful?
Super exciting, thank you. All right, let me look at some of the questions. Okay, so there are a couple of questions around kind of the coalition. Like, do you already have other NGOs as part of the coalition that you mentioned? Will there be a budget for setting up a coalition for coordination meetings with other NGOs, for example, like working breakfast and things like that? So yeah, questions around coalition and working with other NGOs, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So there is no specific budget that is specifically for coalition building. So we have a budget for this role. So for finding someone and paying them a decent wage to do this work, and then we have some budget for additional expenses in Spain around traveling, of course, but also around things like potential consultancy support and events. But coalition building is part of the role. To what extent it's going to be one of the major parts, that is really to be decided by the person who will lead this work together with us here in the rest of the team. We've already developed quite a good core group of businesses working on alternative proteins, some NGOs like ProVeg in Spain, and some other actors in the country. My sense so far from this initial work is that there's way more we could do with NGOs working in other areas. So working on the climate space, for example, or the environment space, or the public health space, or the consumer space. So that's something I think we have, that's an untapped potential. So that's definitely something I would like to, this new person to look into, if that is a promising area we should focus on more.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, still struggling with my trackpad. Okay, someone was asking if the interview will be held in Spanish or English. I think that's a good opportunity to talk about the process in general. So I can give an overview, and then Alex, you can add anything that I might have missed. So basically, the first stage is obviously sending in your application. If I manage to get the link with my trackpad, I will put the link to the job description in the chat. That's where you will find all the relevant information. So let me just paste that in. And from there, you will also be able to access the job brochure, where there is a slide specifically about the process. But basically, In the job brochure, you will see all the requirements for the role, kind of the outline of what that will entail and all that, everything we're discussing now as well. And there will be a link to an application form. So you will be asked to submit a CV. That can be either in English or in Spanish. Please do not include a picture. We try very hard to minimize unconscious bias throughout the process. So yes, we ask you to upload a CV in the language, either English or Spanish. That works for you, but please do not include a picture. And you will also have to complete a short sample work tasks. Those are linked in the application form as well. They are like short questions to answer. So we're not asking for a cover letter. And instead, so that's just CV and sample work task. Everything is in the application form. For people who are invited to the next stage, that will be a written assignment. So you have around like 10 days to complete it. And basically, it's composed of a few questions that will kind of model the kind of work that you would be doing in this role. So kind of really testing your skills and seeing how you would approach things in this position. Of those questions, one will be in Spanish and the other will be in English. And then after that, we move into interview rounds. So the first interview is usually like fairly standard and short, like around 45 minutes, getting to know you. And then the second interview is a bit longer, a bit more in depth about the role specifically. And there might be a part of that is in Spanish, but I'm not sure, Alex.
Yeah, at this point, that's a perfect summary. We don't expect the interview parts to be in Spanish. One thing I want to add is obviously the main language for this role is Spanish. Because in Spanish at like the national level, definitely. And so the most important thing is that someone is really confident in speaking Spanish. Because at the moment, like I don't speak any Spanish. Most people in the team don't speak Spanish, so that's really key. But of course, all of the internal communication within GFI Europe and the wider GFI team, our like language of work is English. So it is necessary that the person who takes this role, as it's written in the job description, really has a working level English. I don't expect that to be a big hurdle for anyone or most people who apply for this role. It's really we don't want to reward anyone for this role who speaks like perfect like Oxford English or has been like living in an English-speaking country for many years. That's not an advantage, if you will. What's really important is that they can do the job in Spain in Spanish.
Awesome. And I see someone who commented that they already sent a CV with a picture. It's not the end of the world. We will not like reject your application on this basis. But again, like we are really trying our best to follow best practices in minimizing bias through the process. So that's one element of it. Another big one is that we assess your written materials anonymously and blindly. So also please do not include personal information in your sample work task because we want to assess those in priority anonymously. So that's the main thing. And for the written assignment, like you will have a candidate number again, so that allows us to assess your work anonymously. All right. Someone is asking, are you looking for someone with legal or policy experience? So again, I would refer you to the job description where there is like all the information and the kind of requirement for the role. But yeah, Alex, if you want to give a summary of the kind of profile that we're looking for.
Yeah, and that gives me the opportunity to talk about another part of the role. So to that question first, there's no requirement for like legal expertise in terms of like having a law degree or having worked in any legal profession. It could be that someone with that background is a good candidate for the role, but it wouldn't be like just because of that, or like someone without that background should definitely want to apply. For policy experience, the short answer is yes, some policy experience is required for the role. So we are really looking for someone who has worked either within government or outside of government in a policy context. So that doesn't necessarily need to have been in Spain. It could be in Spain, could be at the national level, it could be at the regional level or at the local level, could also be at a different level. It could be in another country or at a multilateral level with the UN or the EU. But having some familiarity and experience with and having developed some skills in like navigating public policy and government, that's a prerequisite. It's not, we don't have, if you look at the job description, we don't have a minimum years of experience. Like we don't have a cutoff date, like at least 3 or 4 or 5 years, because in our experience, some people with like just a few years of experience, they are really excellent at doing this kind of work. And some people with like a long experience, they might not be the ideal candidate for this role. So I would really want to encourage you, if you have that first experience, having worked at some level in policy, and you find this role is appealing to you, do apply. Another aspect to this role is that this person will, of course, as I said, be our first like full-time policy lead in Spain. And so related to that is going to be working a bit with the media. So when we work in a new country, there's oftentimes quite a lot of interest on the side of newspapers and TV and radio and other media to report about alternative proteins and the role Spain could play. And so in the context of policy relevant public communications and media and giving interviews and putting out press releases, this role will play definitely an important role. They would be the spokesperson for all policy related media activity of GFI Europe in Spain. That doesn't mean this person is going to be like a media manager or a communications manager, far from it. So we have a brilliant communications team. We have an international PR manager based in Italy, so they will work very closely with our Spain public affairs manager. And we also have a communications agency based in Spain. We're already working with them. So we are already actually working with Spanish media. We're already putting out reports and press releases and these kind of things. But for the first time now, we would have a Spanish spokesperson that they then would be put in that place that they can interact with media.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have a long one, so I will do my best. So to what extent and at what level is GFI intending to engage civil society? So the person says, I believe coalition building in the pursuit of the organization's strategic goal is key. However, are the organization's strategic goals focused on advancing legislation at the national level, or local and regional level also targets for GFI? I think that's kind of the main part of the question.
Yeah, I'm taking two parts from that. One is a question around civil society engagement, coalition building, how important that is. And the other one is about which level of government, so national or regional or local, would this role focus on. The first part, maybe I already started to answer it previously. I think it's important to build coalitions, and our experience in Brussels and other places has shown it's really influential if you can add your voice to others and speak together with groups that have worked on other issues and are not just focused on alternative proteins. GFI is very focused. We want to help solve these big issues, right? Like climate change, environmental destruction, animal suffering, public health risks that are all associated with the way we currently produce most of our meat. And so that's why alternative proteins is so important. But it's important to put that into like the wider sustainable food systems transition, into the wider question around resilience and food security. And so working in coalition with other groups, I think is really essential. Again, the specifics in Spain, how that will look like, will be a question that the public affairs manager will need to answer. About the question on level of engagement in terms of national, regional, local, the national government is definitely going to be a focus of this role, and that is in part because at the national and federal level is where most of the decision making happens that is relevant for the EU level. So again, making that connection, like the Spanish government's role in the EU. But based on our initial experience in Spain, working with consultants, and again, everyone on this call will know this probably much better than I do. The regional level matters a lot. The autonomous communities, being it Catalonia or the Basque Country, Andalusia, the Madrid region even, and many others, they have a lot of responsibility and autonomy for some of the policy areas that are important to us, for example, research funding. And so that is going to be a bit of again, a prioritization exercise, where to focus most, and also when. It could be that in some situations, the political environment at the national level might not be very favorable, so it might be really difficult to make progress there. And so in such a situation, it might be that pivoting to engaging more at some regional level where we see more favorable environments could be a good decision. But again, that's going to be, eventually decided once the person is in place. I hope that answered the question, at least in part.
Yeah, and if there is a follow-up, we have a few minutes left, so send it in quickly. Okay, maybe like a NOPC one. When do you foresee this person to be officially joining the GFI team? Do you have a timeline? I can give an answer to that, and then Alex, you can add anything. Basically, we would be excited for this person to start as soon as possible. But yeah, obviously we are aware that people have personal constraints, notice periods, and things like that. So obviously, for the right person, we are willing to be flexible. But again, the sooner you can join us, the better. That's kind of it. I mean, in a nutshell. Alex, is there anything that you want to add?
I think you covered that perfectly. I was in Barcelona and in Madrid in November last year, and I met with a lot of stakeholders and actors, and I just came back to Brussels, and I was still like brimming with like enthusiasm and energy, and there was so much feedback I got from lots of different actors about like, oh yeah, we need to work on this, we need to start now, we need to be fast. And so I have this sense of urgency that we really need to make progress as soon as possible. But again, as you said, Catherine, for the right candidate, we are flexible.
Perfect, thank you. And then someone is asking about training period and know-how teaching. So maybe in terms of training, we do have an onboarding period, which is roughly 2 weeks, where basically we let you get to know everyone in the team, get acquainted with our systems, kind of swim in information. There's a lot to learn, and it's not going to stop at the end of the 2 weeks. But basically, we try as much as possible to kind of save you from the workflows at the very beginning when you start, so that you get, again, kind of used a little bit to everything and get to know people and build relationships. So we have like a quite kind of thorough and organized process for that. We might be revising it, adjusting it a little bit, but kind of the core of it is there and is working well. After that, again, learning doesn't stop after 2 weeks. You will have a lot of support from the operations team regarding like systems and things like that, from Alex getting into the role, and from the rest of the policy team, and as well from other colleagues in other teams for areas that are relevant. And I guess even from the like policy teams with our other affiliates. I don't know, Alex, if there is like other things that you want to talk about, like maybe specific onboarding for policy, or kind of teaching processes and culture.
Yeah, I think you covered that pretty well. I think just to double down on what you said about learnings from other colleagues in the policy team who've started this kind of work in Germany, for example. I think that the policy work that my colleague Eva has been doing in Germany now with another colleague, Leah, that's very similar. Like it's a very similar role. It's like a new country. And so there's a lot, I think, on learning that this person who will have this Spanish public affairs manager role can draw on. Maybe one other thing I can say here is, when we think about learning and onboarding, I think it's really important to have this like period in the beginning where people can really dive into all the knowledge that we have at GFI. And it's not something within the application process. We really don't want to filter for people who are already extremely knowledgeable about alternative proteins, for example. We have like a lot of technical knowledge. I mean, I don't have a lot of technical knowledge, to be honest. I haven't studied like sciences or anything. It's really not important, or like it's not the key to like learn a lot of technical detail before. it's really important, and that's what we do with the written assignment and the interview process. We're trying to assess skills. We're trying to assess like aptitude for then, when learning all the technical knowledge on the job, doing amazing work. So I would really recommend, looking at the onboarding as like a learning process. And as you said, like I'm learning new things like every week about alternative proteins. And so, yeah, that never stops. It helps also making the job quite interesting.
Awesome. And you even kind of answered another question that was in the list about someone asking about specific experience in agriculture or alternative protein sector, or just policy in general. So I think that covers that pretty well. And again, I invite you to look at the job description. Everything is in there, all the essentials. Okay, just maybe to like for the last few minutes, I think a good question we like to ask for wrapping up is, what do you like about working at GFI?
Yeah, that's always a big one. There are probably two things that stand out to me. One is really the team. It's been quite a ride. I've been with GFI Europe now for over 4 years, and we are, I think, now about 30 people. Is that right? Which seems crazy to me. We were just a handful in the beginning. So it's been such a joy working with people who are not just super smart and super dedicated and really good at their work, but also very kind and supportive and funny. So we have regular team retreats where everyone comes together from the whole Europe team. And those are honestly some of my favorite parts of working for GFI, like just being with everyone together. And so that has been a highlight. And the other big one is just, I mean, our mission and the impact we are having. It's been really impressive to see how, just as one organization with a small team, we've been able to shift really the gears of policy making and beyond policy. I mean, we have a science and technology team, we have a corporate engagement team, we have an amazing team doing all the work in the background, the operations team, the fundraising team, and our communications team. Like, we've been able to make progress on alternative proteins in just a few years, to an extent that I just would have not believed we could make happen just a couple of years ago. So just being part of that mission and having that impact, that's just been fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can only echo what you said. Again, for me as well, like just the amazing colleagues is like one of the most lovely thing I think in this job. Also knowing that even for me, like in the operations team, which is more of a support function, like knowing that the work that I do contributes to the work of other teams, but also like more on the grander scale, like contributes to trying to solve some of the biggest problems that we're facing, is very exciting. And on a very practical level, just like the flexibility that we have, like we have a very kind of flexible, inclusive culture. Just like if you need to arrange your hours and things, like something that we haven't really talked about in the Q&A today, but like, yeah, like we have a lot of flexibility around work arrangements. So like working hours, where you work, if you want to work from home or from a co-working space or things like that. We have a lot of flexibility and support from that. And that's something that I personally really enjoy. Like I know we have colleagues who have enjoyed kind of the digital nomad kind of work style as well. So yeah, that's a nice one. I'm really sorry that we haven't been able to get to all the questions in the 45 minutes we had today. But I'm gonna again like share some links and information in the chat. So for anyone who still has like pressing questions that we weren't able to get to today, you can contact us in writing at europe-hiring@gfi.org, and we will get back to you in writing. Thanks so much again for joining us today. Really exciting to have you all here, and we're hoping to receive an application from you. Have a lovely rest of your day, and bye-bye.